Hello there, I'm Tom Wiggins.
And I'm Emily Elias, and this is Desert Island Dips, the podcast where we pit condiment against condiment and ask, if you were trapped on a desert island, which 5 dips would you take with you?
As it stands, as you know, if you've been listening, we have ketchup, brown sauce, English mustard, barbecue and sriracha sauce on the island so far. This week, we're going to take a look at the only condiment named after a county, Essex sauce. No, it's not really. That's a hilarious joke.
I missed the hilarity.
Because Essex is a county.
Right.
So is Worcestershire. I was just giving it away.
Oh.
It's Worcestershire sauce.
You couldn't guess
Worcester
by
sauce.
clicking play on the episode.
And reading the description. Which I think most people will, either whether they know it or not, will realise that is quite often referred to as Lee Perrins, because I mean it's a similar thing to brown sauce here, where a lot of people would refer to that as HP sauce, whether it's HP made or not. You know.
Can I ask you a question about Worcester sauce? Because we are in England.
Mm-hmm.
Worcester is not a foreign place to us, but in the States and Canada, you run into these people who call it like Worcestershire sauce.
Yeah, but they do that with all kinds of our places.
Oh, I just want to slap them.
Leicester
Square?
Bicester. That is a hard one, to be fair. Towchester. That's a hard one too.
What's Towchester in real life?
Toaster.
What?
Towchester is pronounced toaster.
How is that toaster?
Well, this is if we're going to start talking about why our language is full of idiotic pronunciations, we're going to be here forever.
And we'll never catch that film at Leicester Square.
No, exactly. So it's not just the sort of naming conventions of Lee Perrins that it shares with HP sauce. It's kind of similar. It's I think when we talked about brown sauce before, there were a precursor to the brown sauce as we know it now was a thinner version, which was probably kind of similar to Worcester sauce, which is, I mean, if someone's not had it before, it's, I mean, how would you, are you a fan?
Well, okay, so I wouldn't say it's like something I would put on my chips category as far as like condiments go.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
No, it's quite, I think, I mean, we'll get into this, but it's got quite limited uses.
Yeah, like it's more of like in the vinegar sort of family of like where there might be a debate later of whether it's a flavor and an ingredient as opposed to a dip.
There are lots of ingredient uses.
Yeah, because I feel like aside from like making like a cheese toasty and like jamming some
bang it on top,
Worcester sauce on the top, I'm not really sure how else I would use it as a condiment. But
no, because you've got the Bloody Mary use, you've got I think we're getting ahead of ourselves, but you know, it's if you're not familiar with it, it's like a thin, very liquidy. It's basically made of fermented anchovies. Lee Perrins Worcester sauce.
Really?
Yeah, with like you get, you know how a lot of these condiments we've talked about are like whether you know the ingredients fully or not, you don't know how to combine them in the right way to create the sauce. This is one of those ones where the recipe, you know, for a long time, and again we'll get onto this later, we should be doing more of a trailer kind of thing where we drop in little hints about what's coming. But all we're doing is saying that's coming up later. Where, you know...
in a world
exactly.
where sauce...
Yeah. No, the ingredients were a secret for a very long time. But...
okay, let's start from the beginning.
Yeah.
How did we get this wonderful...
condiment?
Yeah.
Yeah, dip,
I was
sauce.
trying to come up with something clever. How do we get this wonderful genie in a bottle?
So the reason Lee Perrins is sort of synonymous with Worcester sauce is because it is the original British, English, actually, to be more specific, version of the sauce. But it does bear a fairly strong similarity to a condiment called garum, Garum.
I've never heard of garum before.
Greco-Roman. Also, but it was rather than fermented anchovies, I think it was fish intestines. So we're going back quite a long way when that was kind of seen as a cool thing to do to make your sauces. Because now I'm not sure it's really, no one wants to do that, do they?
I personally don't want to be making fish intestine slurry on my balcony,
No.
But that's just me. I'm a modern woman.
No. So there are lots of variations that you would use the generic Worcester sauce or Worcestershire sauce for. But Lee Perrins is clearly the market leader here. The origin story for Lee Perrins, however, is not quite so clear. So
Dun dun dun.
if you ask Lee Perrins themselves, there's no real disputing that they are kind of the original.
They're the brand standard.
They brought it to this country. They created what is known as.
Wait, they brought it to this country?
As in, they brought what was probably garum or something similar from another country and turned it into the sauce that we know today, which is what I'm going to get into. The Lee Perrins story, as they tell it, is that a nobleman brought it back from India in the 1830s. He asked a pair of local chemists in the Worcester area, which is where he's from, called John Wheely Lee, which sounds like a made-up stupid name.
Absolutely.
And William Henry Perrins, which doesn't. That's I'm okay with that name. I'm okay with both, really. And he said, "Here's this recipe for this sauce that I had when I was in India. Can you make it for me?" The story goes that they didn't quite nail it the first time, and they got together all these ingredients and they mixed them all up, and it was disgusting. Which I think is a hazard if you've just got a list of things to put in a big pot or whatever and mix up, and you don't really know what order you're supposed to put them in. Yeah, exactly. I mean that's a potential hazard of the workplace, isn't it? So they put it. They had like I think a barrel or so of it, and they just were like, well, that hasn't really gone to plan. So they stuck it in the cellar and supposedly forget about it for a year or so, and then they're down in the cellar looking for, I don't know, a rat.
Candles.
What else do you keep in the cellar?
Wine.
Yeah, the wine that they keep at the Lee Perrins.
They're chemistry lab, preparing for
the Christmas tree, maybe. Or that must be where you keep the Christmas tree.
I was going to say, like, they were preparing for like an earthquake, and or a tornado to come through town. So checking on their
tornadoes in the Worcestershire area.
Supplies in the cellar.
Yeah, fair point. And so they find this barrels of their sort of experimental sauce that they tried to make before. And as you would obviously do in this situation, you'd go, do you remember that sauce we made that was disgusting? Maybe just leaving it in the cellar for ages will make it taste amazing. So they crack it open, they taste it, and more for me for suggesting that that's a stupid idea, it tasted amazing. And
I don't understand the logic behind keeping it for a year. Like, you gotta be like pretty lazy to not just be like, let's just dump it in the garden.
Well, I mean, there's a chance that they've listened to our episode on...
There's zero chance this has happened.
Which one was it?
Vinegar.
They listened to the vinegar episode and they heard about how people invented vinegar, which is essentially by accident.
100% did not have a time machine and listen to our episode.
How do you know?
Because I know. Because we don't have a time machine yet.
We don't know, but Lee Perrins might. And if they did, they wouldn't write about it on their website, would they?
I mean... There's several things I'm disappointed in just by hearing a snippet of this story. Yeah. And also one is
the lack of the time machine.
The lack of a time machine, number one. Number two, why they kind of abandoned Wheely as a potential name for the sauce.
Wheely sauce.
Yes.
Yeah, Henry Wheely. No, just Wheely sauce. That would be good,
yeah, Wheely sauce.
We should ask them if they want to do an offshoot in partnership with us.
Or maybe they could do like, a special like vintage, original, limited pressing sauce, and they could call it Wheely sauce.
If they've still got some kit left kicking around from that original barrel, they could sell it off at a very high price.
All right, Tom, we're going to need to raise some money so we can get a house with a cellar.
So, I mean, that story is quite sort of neat and tidy, right? So there's a chance that it's not all entirely true. That it just sort of fits the neat and narrative of how they came up with this stuff.
Wait, are you telling me this story might be a product of an advertising agency?
Well, no, probably not Mad Men business, no. But like, the main thing for me is that the identity of said nobleman who brought the recipe back, that is fairly hotly disputed. Because see, the problem is the Lee Perrins history just names him as Lord Sands. Now this is spelled with Sandys, so Sandys, but apparently it's pronounced Sands. If there's anyone that's listening who is an expert on these kind of things, tell me that I've got that wrong if I have. But
let's go with it.
I will probably, as we go through this, say Sandys by mistake over and over again. So just be ready for that.
Do you want to say Sands in like a couple different ways with different intonations so I can edit it in?
Okay. Sands.
Perfect.
So basically, whatever he does from now on, we've got a version of his name that will be suitable. There was a sad one, an excited one, a normal one.
It was just like Toast of London, and
and you're Clem Fandango.
I'm absolutely Clem Fandango in this situation.
But the problem is, so Lord Sands, that is a title as far as I can work out. It's not a specific person.
Right.
So the trouble is finding out which specific person it refers to. You need more detail than just the Lord and the Sands bit. So there was a book by a guy called David Burton called The Raj at the Table, which is all about the Indian influence on English cuisine. He reckons that it was Lord Marcus Sands, who was a governor of Bengal. That makes sense, right? But, and this is fairly big, but there's a guy called Brian Keogh who used to work for Lee Perrins and wrote a book about them called The Secret Sauce, A History of Lee Perrins. He reckons that no Lord Sands was ever a governor of Bengal, and as far as any records show, none of them even went to India.
What does that mean, though? Like,
as in, there is this person, they've got the name wrong, basically. Potentially. So some people think it was a guy called Arthur Hill. He held a title of Baron Sands in 1836, which is around the time that the sauce was invented. I think it was first on sale in 38.
Okay.
But so that kind of works because he's got a similar title. My favourite thing about him, and the reason why I would really like this guy to be the one, is that according to his Wikipedia listing, he was the fattest young man in the British Army. Now, how is that a real statistic somebody keeps? Well, I have you know how Wikipedia is notoriously easy to edit and put in slightly, things that you might not want being put in there. I reckon there's maybe one of the other people who is sort of vying for to be confirmed as the person that brought the recipe back. Has potentially
their ancestors. I've decided to avenge the Wikipedia page.
Yeah. Like, we don't want that Arthur Hill getting the credit. How do we try and discredit his cause for the Lee Perrins original origin story? Let's go on Wikipedia, edit it, and say he was fat. And then they went, no, not just fat. He's the fattest young man in the British Army. So he's my favourite. I'd like it to be him. So
I would love if that was genuinely like
they always kept a record of the fattest member of the army.
Yeah, and in a weird sort of like military beauty pageant that dated back hundreds of years, they would give like a sash or an award.
Yeah, this year, like head boy, or like club captain.
This year, Tim is the fattest man in the British military.
Specifically young man, it says.
Oh, sorry.
So they must have different age categories.
And clearly, Tim is an old man's name.
When you become an officer and you get a bit older, then you're eligible for the fattest old man in the army. Anyway, that title, Baron Sands, this is really helpful when you're trying to work out who invented Lee Perrins. That title has been created 3 different times, and I don't mean just 3 different people have had it. It's been created for 3 different sort of. It's down to our ridiculous social structure in this country. It's like a title for England, it's a title for the British Isles, and it's a title for something else, basically. But they're all Baron Sands. So there's just this basically what seems like unending list of people that have held that title over time. So that's why it's particularly difficult to track down. So there was an Arthur Marcus Cecil Sands.
Oh my God.
Who, one of the other histories of Lee Perrins lists, I think it's Marcus Sands, which is some of that name as the originator. But the problem with that is that he was alive at that time, but he didn't have that title until 1860. So that would not make sense within the timeline, unless it's been written afterwards and they were like, oh yeah, it was Baron Sands Arthur, blah, blah, blah. And, that's where the confusion has come in.
Basically, this sounds just like...
Who was that one we had the other time where everyone had the same name?
Vinegar again.
Was it Vinegar
again?
The
Beauforts.
Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah, it's Vinegar with the Beauforts. I just feel like this really shows, like, back in the day, there was a real concentration of names. And now names have become completely diluted with, like, kids named everything from like Moonbeam to
Moon Unit is
Seven.
Was David Bowie's. No, Frank Zappa's kid, I think.
But like the names have gone crazy, so of course everybody's a unique wild child flower that we can.
You've gone a bit Brexit here.
I haven't gone a bit Brexit. I just think that
why everyone not just called Arthur and
everybody's trying to name
Clara.
their kids something like super unique, and so
should we have a list of names that you can choose from and nothing outside of that?
No, but I'm just saying that it makes it harder in history to figure out all these things because everybody has like the same names, whereas now there's just like there's no more rules about what you can name your kid, and everybody
also,
has all sorts of crazy different names now.
I mean, they have got multiple middle names, but it's the titles thing that has really made this difficult. What I want to do now is bring in another theory.
Go on.
In the 1830s, this is, when this was all happening, when, Lee Perrins was being created, that Baron Sands, the Lord Sands title was actually held by Mary Sands Hill. So it was a lady rather than a lord. But
right.
She supposedly got the recipe from an author who was called Elizabeth Caroline.
Sands?
No, Elizabeth Caroline Gray, and she received the recipe from her father, who was Chief Justice of India. I think that part is indisputable. Supposedly, then she passed it to Mary Sands Hill, who passed it to the Lee and Perrins, to what was his name? Wheelie and Perrins, Wheelie and Lee, whatever they were called. And the reason why that is not sort of in the Lee and Perrins sort of canon is that because of the social conventions of the time, they wouldn't have been able to credit her with coming up with this.
Right, because she was a woman and women can't do anything.
Exactly.
Right.
So
thanks, society.
So that's why it's sort of so hard to track down who it was. That's only a theory from another book that was written after the fact, and that obviously, if that is true, and then Lee and Perrins are still keeping up this whole it was Lord Sands that did it as a geezer. When you'd think by now they would have gone, you know what? Actually,
it's cool to be.
It's fine. And they could have come out. Now. Yeah, they could have come out and got all the good points from saying, actually, you know what? But then everyone would be like, yeah, but you've been hiding it all this time, haven't you? So you're scumbags, and then they would have to be cancelled.
So if my memory math serves me correctly,
yeah.
You've listed 4 potential Sandses.
There's about 4, yeah.
That this sauce could belong to.
Yeah. I need to throw in a little bit of potential doubt on Elizabeth.
Well, I think
Caroline
they all have doubt
on that last one.
Yeah.
Apparently, there is a level of doubt on her whether she actually wrote all the books that she's been credited for writing. So, if we don't know if she even wrote all of her books, do we really know whether she is responsible for sorting out the Lee and Perrins origin story?
Well, no, because we don't know anything.
Exactly.
So you've basically spent this past week researching a lot of things and not being sure of any of them.
No. What I'd like to think is that we've given the listeners the different stories, and they can
choose your own adventure book. You can't pick your own narrative of who invented it.
Things like people like it when things are open ended, don't they? So they can go away at the end and make their own mind up about who they think was in charge. But the origin is disputed as far as I can work out from researching. I mean, the way Lee and Perrins seem to get around it is just by being vague, just saying Lord Sands.
Fine.
Everyone's like, yeah, fair enough.
Doesn't change that the sauce tastes delicious.
It does not, exactly, and that's the main thing. So even if the origin is disputed, its success absolutely is not. There's quite a nice way that they essentially guaranteed that it was going to be popular, because obviously it tastes great. So they were like, well, we need to get this stuff out there, and this is sort of like, I feel like I'm praising sort of marketing, which is not something I like to do. But what they did is they made sure that it was bottles of it were placed on ocean liners, so that people travelling to other parts of the world would be, because it used to take bloody ages to get anywhere then, didn't it? So they would be on these boats for ages, and they'd have to eat all their meals there, and then they'd be like, oh, what's this sauce on the table? Oh, Lee and Perrins, I'll try a bit of that. Oh, it's delicious. Oh, let me get some to take home with me. So that's why, you've basically got a captive audience there, and one that's spreading the word of Lee Perrins around the world.
So cruise ship marketing was big for Lee Perrins.
For Lee Perrins, yeah. And sort of is largely credited for its spread around the world to other countries. Because this blew my mind. The place, certainly this was the case, I think it was in 1996 this stat comes from, so it might not be the case now, but I can't see why it would have changed too much. The place where more Lee Perrins was consumed per head than anywhere else in the world. Have a guess.
The Caribbean? I don't know.
I don't actually know where this is. South America somewhere, I think. Or is it maybe Central America? El Salvador.
In Central America.
Central America?
Really?
How mental is that? El Salvador is like the sort of second home.
I mean, I was in the neighborhood,
Perrins.
but it was completely based off of the cruise ship knowledge. Why is it so popular in El Salvador? Did they just have like a really good marketing campaign, or
well,
like
no, it just obviously got taken there, and was really popular on those cruise liners, and it's just become really popular. They don't call it Lee Perrins. I think it's Salsa Inglese. They call it.
Oh.
Which makes sense, doesn't it? English sauce. Heinz reckons it's the oldest commercially bottled condiment in the United States. So it's essentially the OG condiment of America.
How is that? That can't be. Okay. I'm not going to argue with you. I just feel...
Oh, it's not me you're arguing. It's Heinz you would be arguing with.
I guess Heinz would know. Does Heinz make a Lee Perrins type Worcester sauce? Or
Heinz owns Lee Perrins now.
That makes sense.
It didn't always, but it does now. So do you remember when we talked about the recipe being a secret? Like a lot of condiment recipes are, like, you know, when we talked about Big Mac before, that was a big deal when people found out it was in that. So from 1830, what was it, 1836, I think it was, that it's first one to sell 1838, I believe. And from then until 2009, it was a secret what the actual ingredients were. Do you remember Brian Keogh, the guy that wrote the book, who debunked the identity of the guy that brought the thingy back? I mentioned him like 10 minutes ago.
He
worked for them.
Totally listening.
He worked for Lee Perrins.
Right.
And then he wrote the book about them.
Sauce mate.
Doesn't matter. Anyway, he...
Oh, Brian, yeah.
Brian Keogh.
Brian Keogh.
He found some documents in a skip by the factory.
What?
that dated right back to the early days of Lee Perrins, that had the original ingredients on it.
So they just threw that out in a skip.
So they have now been discovered what the full ingredients are. My favourite thing about this, so it doesn't explain the method either. So again, I mean, you're part of the way there, but you're not.
You don't know the ratios. You don't know the
exactly.
time in which it's being left out to ferment, or how much in quantity we're talking about, or
Exactly.
anything like that.
But the best thing about it for me is that some of it's written in code.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Like,
as in, some of the ingredients aren't what they actually are. They've got code names for them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what are some of the code names?
So we've got Bulldog was one of them. Bulldog Clip was another one, or Bull Car.
Do you have any idea what it translates to?
No.
We have any aspiring code breakers out
Bletchley
there?
Park, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah. Get on it. Bulldog.
Yeah. So you know, they were very careful about letting it get out what the recipe was, because, you know, if you've gone to all this effort to get it spread around the world, you don't want someone else popping up and just.
How
making their
was
own one.
it first marketed to people? Like, was it supposed to be as a condiment, or was
Yeah.
it like as like an ingredient that you add to cooking? Because I think like my first use of Lee Perrins would be when my mom taught me how to make a shepherd's pie, and it was like you put
it in there.
you put Lee Perrins in with the mincemeat to give it a richer flavor. Like, where did it fit in the food spectrum of how people were being told to use it?
I think based on like there's an advert, not from quite at the start, but over 100 years ago, about putting it. Well, it just says basically put it in everything. There's an advert where it says all dishes such as soups, fish, meats, gravy, game, salads, etc. are doubly appetizing and digestible when flavored with Lee Perrins sauce. So it's basically just going weighing in everything, which is kind of how I deal with it.
What do you put it on?
Not everything, but just anything that I feel like could benefit. Well, I think the difference is that you never dip into it, do you?
No.
You always add it on top. It is like an ingredient, but it's not one that you necessarily put in at the start. It's one that you put on the end as a little finishing touch. It's like a garnish almost.
If I gave you a bottle of Lee Perrins, what would...
My number one use for Lee Perrins, and actually it's for a rival that we're going to do a podcast on another time, so I'll say what it is, but we won't get into it too much. Henderson's Relish is cheese on toast, weighing it on the top. Baked beans, I normally always put it in baked beans.
Really?
Yeah. What was it? I had something recently, like a sausage casserole, wang it in that. That's always good. Anything that just feels like it could do with a little bit of a... you know?
I think this is where like probably the controversy in this as a topic for...
There is no controversy.
There is. The controversy for me lies of whether you would call it a condiment or whether you would call it an ingredient. Because I don't think I generally would eat it as a condiment. I would eat it
That's
as...
up to you.
Shut it down, Tom Wiggins.
No, I'm going to just bring us back to the condiments, as we always will do if there's any doubt about whether something is a condiment or not. Optional, not required.
Yep.
Yes. Wouldn't eat a bowl of it on its own with a spoon.
Nope.
Do you get it for free with a meal?
I don't know. I've never...
Yes, you do.
Where?
Everywhere.
Like if I went into a Weatherspoons, would there be Lee Perrins on the giant condiment cart?
They'd probably have a sort of knockoff, second-rate version. But yeah, there would be Worcester Sauce, which is essentially the same.
But I just...
Number 4.
I think...
We haven't done all the condiments. Can it be bought in a bottle in a shop?
Yes.
Yeah, all around the world.
I just think that, like, okay, can I peer behind the curtain a little bit of some Desert Island Dips talk for the listeners? So you and I, in our planning for the show, have been having great debate over whether maple syrup is a condiment. And I say it is because it follows the condiment rules, blah, 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 blah. You get it free with your pancakes. It's a sweet condiment, but it's still a condiment. And I think that it, like Lee Perrins...
Well, no, because it's
or
sweet.
Worcester sauce.
It's because it's sweet that I don't agree with it.
You didn't say that in the condiments, though.
No, exactly. That's what I mean. But it was kind of like the savoury food part of it was unspoken.
I feel
Didn't
like
need to be said.
That Lee Perrins is less of a condiment than maple syrup is.
That is the most ridiculous thing you've ever said. Do you know what the original Lee Perrins shop on Broad Street in Worcester is now?
A museum?
Poundland.
As it should be.
No.
Back to the people from where it came.
No,
and they can go into the Poundland and purchase their own bottle of Lee Perrins
do you know what?
for £1.
I bet you can't.
I bet you can.
No, it's too... They don't have brands like that in Poundland, do they?
Yeah. You'd be
Really?
surprised by the brands that they have in Poundland as a Poundland shopper.
The Balham one closed down about 2 months ago, so I can't go in anymore.
Well, there's one down the road from me, and let me tell you, deals on...
Really? I mean, I just bought toothpaste in there. That look doesn't come across in an audio format.
I don't know what you want me to do with that information if I just buy toothpaste at Poundland. Like,
I don't anymore. It's closed.
Maybe because of your lack of
I
patronage.
didn't go in there enough. Yeah.
And we all know you buy your gift bags and greeting cards in there.
I bought 2 birthday cards the other day. It cost me over £5.
Exactly. What is that about? It's a piece of paper.
So I mean, where are we going with this? If you're saying that are you saying it's not a condiment?
I'm saying I will allow you to call it a condiment because I know it's important in your heart, but in my heart, I don't put it necessarily in I put it more in the ingredient family than the condiment family.
So you think it's more like brown sugar or baking powder?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. You'd never put either of those on
food
afterwards, would you?
But like, okay, like the argument with vinegar is
brown
like
sugar you might actually.
But like the argument with like vinegar is that like you put it on chips, like you put it on like, you know, very sort of like basic things to add a flavor to it. I'm never seeing anybody just be like, oh mate, pass me the Worcester sauce. I need to throw it on XYZ. Like I've never
cheese on toast.
One thing, and that's more like at a home-based operation that you're making for yourself as a treat. Like, I just don't think I've ever seen somebody really get like up in arms about like, oh man, pass me the Worcester sauce.
Just because it's not got a sort of well-known, obvious, or lots of well-known uses. I mean, I would level exactly the same accusation at maple syrup for savoury uses. There's one.
You are where you're talking to a Canadian, and so it like breaks my heart.
Yeah, but how? Like, what are the savoury uses of pancakes and of maple syrup? And in fact, I'm not even sure that pancakes counts because it's kind of like neither, isn't it? A pancake is like savoury and sweet depending on what you put on it. So
this isn't the maple syrup episode. Maple syrup is not on trial. You just can't defend. You cannot defend Lee Perrins.
We're definitely doing that episode because I am going to tear it to bits.
Good. I hope you do. I hope you do, because I will be prepared with facts and data to back it up. But
I'd like to see that.
I just think, okay, for me personally, are we getting to the point where we're saying whether it's on the island?
Absolutely,
I think it's pretty, because I think it's pretty obvious for me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it on the island. I appreciate it for what it is. I give it like a solid handshake of bon voyage. But
send it on one of those ocean liners.
Yeah, like have a nice time going around the Caribbean converting people Worcester sauce.
But have you not thought about the possibility for Lee Perrins saving us from the island? It's arriving on a cruise liner. And we can flag it down. Lee Perrins, we're over here. Save us. You can be our sixth condiment. Because we'd be allowed more then, wouldn't we? Because we wouldn't be on the island anymore.
If Lee Perrins is offering me a transport vehicle off the island, I will not bite the hand that feeds. But
no, I would be like, no, she said it's not a condiment. She's not coming. She's staying here. I'm coming with you right there. Well, I mean, so for me, you know, there's certain things where like you absolutely respect and acknowledge their importance in history and the development of something. So, you know, like certain like old film directors or old bands that you can kind of go, yeah, I appreciate that they are important, and what if they didn't exist, then we probably wouldn't be where we are now with others. But they're like quite old, and I don't really like the sound of them. I'm not.
So Madonna.
No, not Madonna. I should have thought of an example, really. For me, I do like
Madonna paved the way for generations. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but,
and her later stuff.
Yeah, but she's not Worcester sauce, is she? Anyway, that's where Worcester sauce is for me. And as I mentioned, Henderson's relish. I actually prefer that to Worcester sauce. So I'm not going to put Worcester sauce on the island either. Lee Perrins are staying off, but I am doing so in the knowledge that what they have done for condiments and condiment kind and us is very important.
I give them deep respect.
I feel like, do you know how I'm always looking for ways to synthesize other condiments from the ones we've already got on the island?
Yes, this niche obsession that has come up in the past 11 episodes. Go on.
My little science experiments that I'm going to have to pass the time. I feel like I could get a sort of vague approximation of Worcester sauce out of my bottle of brown sauce that I've got.
Yeah, I think that flavor profile for you like works.
Just dilute it with seawater and see what happens.
Sure. But for me, I just don't think, like, we got a pretty competitive list right now.
It is, you're right, yeah. And
it just doesn't knock it out of the park.
If we just don't change it for the rest of this entire
it's changing.
Project.
I have some dream ideas of things I want to get on there.
But if people see through it as if like, oh yeah, you're just changing it for the sake of it, then we're going to be in trouble, aren't we?
I think that we've cultivated listeners and followers that will call us out for being absolute phonies.
Yeah, they know if we're being genuine or not. Right. So what I would like to do to end this episode is to say thanks to Lee Perrins for introducing the world to its delicious sauce. Without them opening up random barrels in the cellar and just eating them, we wouldn't have it. And I think the condiment world would be a poorer place without that. But if we just keep them on the cruise liner, they can carry on sailing around the world, and we'll wave to them as they go past the island. Is that fair?
That's a very fair assessment. It's touching. I can tell you've been a best man before and given speeches that would make people cry.
Which which would make, hang on, what's his name? John Wheely Lee and William Henry Perrins shed a small brown tear.
I feel like we'll carve their names into a tree on the island out of respect.
Yeah. I'll make them out of coconuts and stuff like in that Tom Hanks film.
Yeah, they can be our Wilson.
That's it, yeah. We can talk to them when we get bored. Right then, that's the end for this week. Thanks very much, everyone, for tuning in. We are on social medias, Twitter.
Oh, say that with some enthusiasm. We're on social media.
Well, you've just done that, so that's
Tom's
fine.
eyes just rolled back.
Desert Island Dip, singular, on, what's it called, Twitter. Desert Island Dips, all of them, plural, on Facebook. What?
Yeah.
Okay. What's
I'm
the email
agreeing with
address?
you.
desertislanddips@gmail.com.
That's it.
If you follow us on Twitter, we are keen to hear your thoughts and take suggestions of what sources you'd like us to talk about in the future.
Please. This is a collaborative process, people. Let us know what you're thinking and you're feeling.
And that's it. Yeah, so thanks for tuning in. Join us again next week for...
Surprise.
Well, I thought you were going to sing the name of the podcast as a sort of little jingle.
I don't have a jingle for
Okay,
it.
fine. Never mind. I thought you might have prepared one.
No, we didn't. we didn't work on a jingle.
Well, I thought you were a...
Desert Island
That's
Dips.
the one. I thought you were an improviser.
I dabble. I don't like to brag about it. No.
Well, I thought the rule was when
nobody
you give someone the opportunity, you have to go with it.
I never said I was good at improvising.
Well, with that, I think we should probably go.
My self-esteem, yay! Bye.
Bye.